So in today's video, we're going to see if we can get this 1949 Disston heavy-duty chainsaw running. This is a 2-man chainsaw with a 4-foot bar. It is quite large, and it's also a twin-cylinder 2-stroke engine that they say is rated for 15 horsepower. And it'll be interesting to see how hard this is to get working and cutting wood. So without much more delay, I'm going to cut right into this. So I'm going to lay this bar on its side because this has a rotating bar. So I'm going to rotate it on its side, lower the table down, and take an angle grinder with a wire wheel on it and get as much loose rust off that blade as I can before I take it off, because it'll be a lot easier to wire wheel that chain when it's on it than trying to wire wheel it while it's off of it. So I'm going to do the best I can to get the rust off now. Okay, so I got that all wire wheeled, and then I took the bar and chain off. Here's the chain. As you can see, the chain's a little bit stiff, as it doesn't bend in all the places it's supposed to. Some places it bends quite well, and other places it doesn't bend at all. Like right here, it's perfectly fine, and then the next chunk is rock solid. So I'm going to take it over to the kerosene tank and let it soak and clean all the rust out of it. It doesn't appear that it's going to be too hard to break it loose. If I go to one of these stuck bits here and I grab it and bend a bit, it normally breaks right free. So getting it in the kerosene tank and letting it soak for a bit will probably loosen this thing right up, and hopefully it'll clean out some of the rust so it doesn't look quite as bad, because right now it don't look very good. But I think it's going to be okay for now, and for all I'm going to do with it, I'm only going to cut a log once or twice with it, and then I'm going to pass it on to somebody that actually collects chainsaws, because they're not really my thing. But for now this will do, so I'm going to go put it in the kerosene tank and we'll move on to finishing up the bar. Okay, so it's the next day now. I went to town and picked up a bunch of different things to try and help clean this bar up. I don't know if it's for something that chainsaw people do, but I know when I first see a chainsaw, the first thing I see to kind of judge the quality of the chainsaw is the bar. And this bar currently is quite rusty. It ain't the worst bar I've ever messed with, but I do want to try and make it nice and shiny again. So I'm going to try and clean it up with some sandpaper and stuff, as well as I have some paint to try and fill in the pits with. But we'll see how that all goes. I kind of lied to you guys at the beginning of this video about the chainsaw itself. I said we will see if it gets running, but in all secrecy, I did actually get it running earlier this week. The day after I picked it up, my coworker wanted to see if it actually ran, so we quickly brought it into the shop and seen if we could get it going. All we actually had to do to the thing was file the points, and it fired right up. I had to do no carburetor work to it whatsoever, but it's been sitting for 4 days since then, and maybe the gas being in the carburetor broke some stuff loose, so we'll see what happens. But we do know, in fact, it can run, so that's a big start to this video. So sorry to you guys that if you don't like that, but we got anxious and we were quite curious if it would run, because I've never had a chainsaw this big and it was kind of cool, so we wanted to see how it would go. And then after sanding it, if there's still some pretty big pits in the bottom of it and stuff that makes it look kind of shitty, I'll go and get it sandblasted, and I'm going to paint some silver paint into the pits and then resand it so it all matches relatively. That'll at least get rid of the red rust colors and make it a nice silver bar, and it'll make it look quite nice. I don't want to paint the whole thing, because then if you try and use it, it's going to scrape that paint right off. But if I only paint inside the rust pits, it shouldn't wear off, and it should just make it look better. Okay, so while the paint is drying outside on that bar before I sand it off to make it a nice looking bar, I'm going to take the time to break all the links on this chain loose. So overnight I had it sitting in kerosene, so hopefully that soaked into all the rust spots and it should break loose fairly easy, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so after a little bit more tearing down and working around with it, I've gotten it to this point here. This is as far as I'm going to tear the engine down because I know the engine runs, so I really don't want to get the carburetor off or any of the timing stuff off for fear of making it run worse or not running as well. I like to use the logic of don't fix what ain't broke. I'll take the entire engine over to the kerosene wash tank and wash it down good. Take a wire brush to the fins to clean them up and all that stuff. Hopefully the fair bit of the paint stays on it. With paint on aluminum, it likes to come off pretty easy, so I'm not sure how much will be left by the time it's done. That's how I'm planning to do that, and we'll see how it all goes. Okay, so before I actually start cleaning this up real good and a couple things I need to take apart more, like this handle, I'm just figured I'd go over a quick close overview of how everything looks now. So as you can see on this, it's quite grimy. This should clean up pretty nice, I'm hoping. I still gotta take that plate out, but that ain't too hard. See how that goes. I'm gonna polish up these handles, make them look nice. Wire wheel all these, will make them look nice and shiny. Might polish up the handle parts of the handles so it looks nice. I actually don't think this is too dirty myself, so that's how I'm going to do that, but I'm just going to degrease it first and then go from there. The top's pretty scuzzy, so that'll look pretty nice, cleaned up. bogging down because of chip load. Okay, so that's going to have to do it for this video today. I don't have any other footage of the chainsaw. We kept having problems with it bogging down and locking on the chain. I'm assuming it's because I have the chain sharpened wrong or have the chain set up wrong. It doesn't help that the only way to cut good with it, with the logs I have, is to cut lengthways, and they don't really like cutting lengthways because of the strandy chips it makes. And if you try and cut them the other way, they're too skinny, so they only grab a couple teeth on the chain, and it'll just latch it and lock up. Well, that's all there's going to be for today's video. We kept struggling with it after this point because it would keep locking up the chain. I'm assuming it's because I'm cutting lengthways that it's getting too hard of a chip load or something. I can't cut the other way because the logs are too small, so it only grabs on a couple teeth and it'll lock up that way too. And I don't have any other big logs to test out on it, so we ended up giving up with that. And I also ended up selling the chainsaw to somebody since then. He hasn't quite picked it up yet, but I ain't really planning on using it after I've sold it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. If you want to see more videos about old machinery and engines, please consider subscribing. I make all kinds of content on the related subjects. I'm quite happy with how the chainsaw turned out, even though I couldn't cut a whole log with it before I sold it, but I ain't really a chainsaw person, so I'm pretty sure they'll enjoy it more than I did, and I hope to see you in the next video.